What are different things you've learned as a husband, different things I've learned as a husband? Because here's where I go wrong. Here's some things that have worked, and we could pass that on. So are you telling me sometimes if I send you a challenging text, like unsolicited advice, you're not a fan of that?
I'm open to unsolicited advice. I just,
if it's like one husband to another husband trying to challenge you to like serve your wife well, you don't like those.
I like you, right? I'm gonna take whatever you send my way and at least consider it. I just think maybe understanding the context always helps out a bit too.
Probably context for the listener. I mean, so what we're talking about was a random text I sent Chris the other day saying he should make dinner for his wife.
Out of the blue, I get this text from Mike right around, I guess maybe a couple hours out.
It was close to time,
right? Yeah. Said, hey, you should make dinner for your wife. And what did I say back to you?
Well, I feel like you received it well. I'm giving you the benefit as a friend that you received it well. The very next text was well, Mike, you should go paint your house.
Did that rub you the wrong way?
I'm going to give you the benefit that you received it and you process it and you are extending an opportunity to me to go paint my house. Not what could have come across as, oh, great, you want me to cook? Well, you go paint. So see you later. See you later, fella.
Well, if only you could have seen the smile on my face as I was typing that back, because I understood that most nights I'm helping to figure out dinner.
Whoa.
And not to pat myself on the back,
Mr.
there,
Chef.
not Mr. Chef.
Are you
that's
the
just
chef?
how we roll. We work out dinner together, and oftentimes I'm helping to either make it or do, and it's just us.
I think every marriage has like a lead on one subject matter, and the other one's kind of like the assist. Like Joelle's figuring out dinner more often than me.
Yeah.
So are you figuring out dinner as in like, are you cooking from scratch, or are you just figuring out what's going to be like on the table?
It's all farm to table at the Harvard house. I'm going out in the garden and I'm getting, some sage and some thyme and then, some freshly caught
after you hunted all
fish.
day. After you hunted all day and cleaned the animals.
Exactly.
Prepared.
And then, we have a little service for the animals prior to preparing. And
a little gathering.
Exactly. And then
That's offensive.
We enjoy.
That's offensive to PETA everywhere.
To PETA?
Speaking of PETA.
I think PETA's delicious. But,
do you?
Do you like PETA?
I didn't realize that set you up for that. That was good. So basically what you're saying is sometimes you're going out and getting Whataburger for dinner.
Maybe it's Chipotle.
A little payway.
Yeah,
a payway perhaps.
A little bit of payway.
Oh man.
But hopefully I did not discourage you in any way or
no. But I mean,
offend
besides
you
the fact you think our house looks terrible from the outside.
I haven't even seen your new place.
Well,
yet,
I haven't even seen it, and you're making fun of it.
Do you need to paint it? Has Joelle been asking you to paint it?
I might need to paint a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, so this really hit you in an area that
we'll talk about it later.
Sorry.
It's another episode.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, next time.
I will think about my text a little bit more before sending them back to you. But
thank you.
Communication is always going to be a little bit of a challenge, right? I mean, we're people.
So yes, communication is key, and something we were talking about before we started recording are kind of like lessons learned. I mean, maybe we're at the stage of life where we're a little older. I mean, I know you're there, right. But seasoned is right, more mature is what some people would say.
We'll call it that.
You got the black and white in your hair. Isn't that like the
salt and peppers here?
Salt and pepper wisdom. Or great band, little salt and pepper.
A little salt and pepper.
Do you remember a little salt and pepper?
I do remember them.
Were you gonna say y'all gonna make me lose? Or are you thinking that was salt and pepper? So we talked about 25 years this year for you. Congratulations!
Thank you.
By the way,
very much.
anniversary applause. 14 years for us. Thank you. I'll applause for our own marriage. Don't worry about clapping. No, it's fine. Don't put any effort. Don't put any effort into it. So,
I'm doing the wave. Hold on one second.
Hey.
All right. There we go.
So then it kind of brought up, the role of husbands. What are different things you've learned as a husband, different things I've learned as a husband? And then it just kind of kicked off a conversation of let's talk about that. I think a lot of men, women would. I think maybe benefit from a conversation like this. I mean, it's just nice to talk about, okay, what have you learned? Because here's where I go wrong. Here's some things that have worked. And we could pass that on to the next guy striving to be a great husband, or the next woman want to be a great wife, thinking about maybe how a guy thinks, things like that. So
yeah, anything that could help out marriages by sharing a little bit about what we've learned along the way, I think is a worthwhile endeavor.
So you get to go first, since you have the 25 years.
Okay.
The silver, I think they call it the silver,
It's the silver
anniversary.
right? Yes.
That's what they say.
Yes.
I don't know who makes those things up.
I don't
by
know
the
who
way.
made that up.
There's a
either,
boardroom.
but
There's a boardroom somewhere.
they said this one's going to be silver and then
Yes.
gold and then platinum and
Gold, platinum, I don't know what's after that.
Yeah.
So 25 years in, what is something, I'm never going to ask what's the number one thing. I don't like those questions, by the way. I think they're a little too challenging.
I think we can.
What's something that comes to mind for you, that like a lesson you've learned along the way?
Yeah. So one of the things that comes to mind that has helped and hasn't helped is not being an effective listener.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man, that one
I think
stings.
That's something that maybe as guys, maybe we're just not as.
You think that's
prone
common?
to-
I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna go out there and say that's common, because
Is it
even-
a learned skill?
I'm gonna say it's common that a lot of husbands don't listen well, because that seems to be commented on the most, and that stings when I hear you say it. Let's just go on the assumption, and guys, if you don't like this, get a hold of us. You're probably not
Don't
listening.
actually
You're probably
don't
not
put your
listening.
hands on us.
Well, you're probably not
but
listening
yeah,
anyway, so
yeah,
it doesn't matter.
so-
Hey, male gender burn. No, I don't think we're good listeners. Why are we not good listeners?
I think we want to take action. I think we want to jump into a solution. And I think, at least I'll speak from my experience, I just want my wife not to have to worry about something. And so
it's actually good intention. Like you
I
don't,
think it's good intention. It's not necessarily to put her down or to say you can't do this or you can't handle it. It's I want to help. I want to help you arrive at a solution.
yeah.
And that's not what she's always looking for. Or in fact, I don't think that she's looking for that at all.
Yeah.
I think she's looking for me to listen and to confirm that her feelings about it are valid. And then she's going to have a solution, and I'll be there in support.
Yeah. Did you learn that? Was that like a hard lesson right away? Like how long do you think it took? Were you like, hey, I've been married for a week, I need to listen better?
No.
Did it take years, or like
Years. I would say even 25, because I'm still having to remind myself
yeah. Wow.
not to do that or recognize when I'm doing that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's a good one, because 14 years, for us, I want to say maybe sometime during year one. Okay. Constant learner for me too, by the way. I mean, me and you both, the whole premise of the podcast, we're clearly not there.
Not there, yeah.
We're constant learners, but let's put it this way. We're just here constantly. We may not be constant learners, but we should become learners constantly, right? Of any topic, husband, anything we've talked about so far. I want to say maybe the first year or two, there was eventually a conversation I had with Joelle where it was like, okay, are you asking for my help or a solution, or are you just wanting me to listen?
Great question.
And she would be, and it sounded so, I actually thought I was maybe even belittling her by the question, because it sounded really elementary.
Maybe not a great question.
Well, no. I actually think, and she's told me later, it is actually a really effective question, and I would encourage guys to ask that question. But I'm just saying, when I said it, there was a piece of me that was like, do I have to ask this? And it was like, oh, I really do, actually. And she would say, no, I just want you to listen. And it was like, okay, you want me to listen like the first 5 minutes? And she was like, I just want you to listen the whole time. I don't want you to say a single thing. I just literally need you to listen. That was I can't speak for every guy, but that was like something not developed in me emotionally. Probably also growing up with like my dad and my brother and a bunch of guys. And like, it wasn't like, I feel like I missed out on some emotional development. Because I'm still a learner of, I need to literally sit here and just listen and
And just let that be
don't
that.
say anything.
Yeah.
Like, right? And that's still like, really? Like, just listen. But to your point, yes, because it validated her, gave her an outlet. She already had the solution. She's a mature woman following the Lord, has more wisdom than anyone I know. She clearly already has a solution. But she needed me to partner with her and listen and just be there and validate the feelings and emotions that were going on. But that was really, really hard. That's still hard for me now to go, oh, okay, take the posture of listening.
Yeah. And it can be active listening, right? You don't have to necessarily just sit there and power through it and just be quiet and wait for your turn to talk.
What would you call that type of listening?
I would say where you're just sitting silent and waiting for her to finish.
Well, yeah, let's go down that rabbit hole for a second. So when we said real listening for a husband.
Yeah.
So what would be a way of what's not real listening?
Real listening is maybe come in and say, are you done? Can I?
As in that's not real listening. Like
No,
you're
that's
just waiting
not,
for the person.
You're in your mind, or whether you say that out loud, which I don't recommend saying that out loud.
Same. Please don't say that out loud.
Guys. Do not
it'd
say
be
that out
funny
loud.
for us if you say it out loud because you're going to be in trouble. But don't say that out loud.
But if you're just waiting to say what it is that you want to say after they're done, then
so maybe a good example is while the other person's talking, if you're conjuring up the response or you're processing in another realm, whatever, mentally, and you're ready just to come back when noise stops happening, you're not really listening to your wife.
No, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be quiet during the whole time. You can ask her questions. That's the active listening is you can say, so what I'm hearing you say is, you can summarize, what it is that she said to you. And these aren't tricks. These aren't ways to, trick your wife into thinking that you're listening. These are actually make sure that you're understanding what it is that she's sharing with you. And that way you'll know what it is that the problem is, or, what you can be praying for her about. So ask
and the
her
fact that
types of qualifying questions, I'd say.
And then the fact that you're actively listening, that is the way you're serving your wife. Like that is the thing you're doing. Even if, you have a fix-it mentality, which I think a lot of guys do. I think a lot of people do actually.
Sure.
And with good intent, like you said, you want to actually help find a solution to help your wife. Like why wouldn't you as a husband?
Right.
But the listening, like it's kind of like, guys, get this. The listening might be the thing. And that's it.
The listening is the service.
That is the service. It's not listening and. I mean, it can be, but rarely is it that. It's mainly just listen. Like nothing else.
And let that be that.
That I think is very challenging for a lot of husbands. Even when we say that, just like, listen. Like, shh, nope, no talking.
Yeah.
For us, I had a guy. So before we got married, was that kind of your main? I don't mean to jump. Like listening was kind of.
I think
one of your main things.
that will help to create better communication, whether it's year 1 or year 25 or further down the road. I think that there's always going to be room for better listening.
Yeah,
on our part as husbands.
Man, that's challenging for me, like in a good way, because I'm not always taking the posture of let me pursue my wife to listen to her. Yeah. That's good. I gotta say that. I mean, yeah, that's it's why it's lessons learned, right? It's kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah, and to learn again.
Yeah, keep learning. One of the main things for me that at least that sticks out when we were talking about this is I asked a bunch of guys before we got married, like, hey, give me some marriage advice. What's something that stands out to you? I was just curious. I wanted to go ask like 15 guys and see if they all said the same thing, because then it would be like, okay, clearly this is important. Or if I would just get a bunch of random, I don't know. I don't even know what I was going for. And I had one guy who said, basically he said, let me paint a picture for you. He's like, there's going to be a day sooner than you think. You guys are going to have an argument or a disagreement. It's two sinful people coming together. And you're going to have a moment where you're going to be sitting in another room and you're going to think, well, I'm not going first to like initiate reconciliation or peace or, if we had a fight, like someone needs to say something next. And he said, you're going to sit there and you're going to go, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Like she can come to me or she can say something or just, I'm not, it's her turn. And he's like, even if she is 1000% in the wrong, factually something happened and she's wrong. He said, it's on you every single time to take the first step. It's like, you're the spiritual leader in the home. It doesn't mean she doesn't have a spiritual leadership. It's like, but you're the sacrificing role, right? You're the role of Jesus to the church, Jesus laying down his life for the bride, clearly sacrificing everything of who he is for us. So it's on you 100% of the time to take the first step. And he said it so, like we're laughing, having a good conversation. And it was like, as soon as that part of the conversation came up, it was like a finger in the face of like, you listen to me kind of a thing. I was like, holy Toledo. I wasn't expecting that. Like the temperature of the room changed. And that has stuck with me for the last 14 years. And he has 100% success rate. Like he's right. And it has challenged me in scenarios to go, oh, this is on me. This is on me. We cannot go to bed with this anger or every time a first step needs to be taken, I need to initiate. And it doesn't mean, by the way, Joelle hasn't taken the first step and initiated. She has plenty of times. And that's like a gift. Like that's amazing. Praise God for that. But who's responsible at the end of the day? And I think he's right in that for the role of a husband. And at least for us, that's been super powerful, essentially to go, okay, I initiate every time.
Sure. And whether you've gotten that right 100% of the time over that 14 years.
Oh, obviously I've got it right. You know, yeah. I've perfected this
At least
formula.
The picture was painted for you, though, of what it's supposed to look like,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And what a great piece of advice there, because it does show you.
I share that with people. I mean, it's been gold.
Yeah, and I see why, because there's no out there for you if you are wanting to lead spiritually in your home. And then this way it doesn't flip it to where it's, okay, well, she has to make me feel good about myself as far as coming and sacrificing and, telling me she was sorry for something that might have happened. It's... you're trying to be the reconciler. You're the one who's trying to bring the marriage back under Christ. And so,
well, yeah, because if we're going to be honest, whether or not someone's a believer or not, the reason a husband's not going to take the first step is, he thinks he's owed something. Yeah, it's pride. It's all selfishness and pride. and you and I have been there constantly, right? Again, we're not saying we've handled this perfectly.
Some of us more than others, yeah.
I mean, I'm saying it's pride because that's exactly what's going through my head. I'm like, well, no, I'm not doing this. Yeah. And it's because it requires humility to take the first step and go, okay, I can own this and move forward as a proactive peacemaker versus just a reactive, passive, lazy husband that is not going to produce fruit. It's not going to produce a joyful marriage. And it's going to create, in my opinion, over time, two sinful adults kind of shoulder to shoulder going through life, maybe because of kids or because of careers, but eventually they're going to turn and look at each other and they're going to be like, I don't even know who you are anymore.
Right.
And there's just no relationship with that. Right.
Yeah, that's a scary scenario there, right? Especially, if you've been together for a long time and you don't want to get into a situation where you don't know your partner.
No.
So, but it's easy to talk about, I would say, here from this vantage point of, all you do is just lay down your pride and take up some humility. But when you're in it, when that pride is just going full throttle, what keeps us there? What are we trying to protect?
Oh man, I mean, when in the moment it feels like it's impossible to take the first step, or you're like just enraged with that pride to be like, I will not, like I will die before
on this hill.
Before I walk in this room, I will die right here on the couch, and I will die a happy man. You know what I mean? The pride will wreak its ugly. I think I don't want to humble myself on those moments because I don't want to be wrong, or I don't want to be what I think would be weak. I want to be, the man or just be right and not. I guess it's probably something about thinking I'll be a weak guy, and I don't want to be weak to my wife of all people. And so I'm sure lots of insecurities, things like that.
Sure.
And just the sin in the flesh that gets so, have you ever noticed in those moments, it's so intense, but it's always like right in that moment. That little window of intensity doesn't go on necessarily for hours. It's like in that 10-minute window where you want to like lash out or do something stupid. And I'm not the expert at this either, and I haven't been following Jesus too long. But I feel like when the attacks of the enemy or our sin kind of takes over, it's always like in these explosive moments where if you can just be like a little patient to get like let the heat come down just a little bit, it makes all the difference, I think, in kind of how we respond.
Oh, for certain.
Yeah.
Yes, that does help. I know that, when I find myself there, again, I'm with you in that, to where you're trying to protect, or I'm trying to protect some version of myself, some sort of thoughts that I have. And it's usually not at the best, it's not at the opportune time there. Something at work could have made me question, how well am I doing this? Or, some insecurity like you mentioned. But usually there's some practical things that you're thinking about that, okay, well, I'm already feeling a little bit down here. And then if something happens to where our wife is not seeing us in the way that we want to be seen, then that's where we get even more insecure, and that's where we might lash out in that way of just being really prideful. Yeah, we kind of do a disservice to our wives and then to ourselves when we depend on them to be the reflection of who we are as men. And the real the reflection that we need to be looking at is how does Christ see us? And I think it puts too much pressure on our wives to carry how we should be feeling about ourselves.
Do you mean kind of like when you find your confidence, if your wife says something encouraging to you, you're like on cloud 9 during the day, but then if she says something that
then the whole
maybe discourages you, the whole day, you're like, well, the day is ruined.
Right.
Kind of. Is that what you mean?
And then how are you going to respond? I mean, you might carry that through the day. You might carry that through a couple of days. And so nothing is as pitiful, I would say, as a man walking around giving the silent treatment, pouting because he didn't like something that his wife said. And unfortunately, that's been me.
Yeah, no, same. Well, you know what? That's also a good word then, why I feel like that's where I can go to take the first step. I kind of go, okay, Jesus has taken the first step with me, so surely I can do this towards my wife.
Right.
Because otherwise, in that moment, when we talk about the heat being turned up, I don't know why I'm going to choose humility. Just I left to my own flesh, I am not going to go in that room first. I'm not taking the first step. I know because of the Lord, and maybe because of experience of talking to other marriages, I mean, I need to reconcile my marriage. Like, I need to be a peacemaker in my marriage. And I look to the cross and go, okay, Jesus significantly was that peacemaker towards me in spite of all my sin.
Right.
It was so much worse than anything my wife could ever do towards me. So are we saying I can't get up and pursue my wife over X topic? What topic could overtake that? And I don't mean to say that to belittle topics that are out there. There are some really hard topics. But as husbands, you can still take the first step towards initiating whatever needs to happen in those moments.
And as you mentioned, it's our responsibility, right? I think your friend gave you some really great advice there. And that just sticks with you when you get that, when you realize, okay, this is my duty here. As I said, duty.
Wait, this is because sometimes we're 5-year-olds. We're going to keep going. We're leaving that in. Here's the deal, guys and ladies. We can say duty. We're mature adults.
Duty.
We have a duty.
We have a duty.
Okay. So we're gonna move forward.
We're gonna really enunciate.
We have responsibilities and duties. So there we go. We've said it. We're moving forward.
Out there.
It's out there.
Yeah, our responsibilities there are very clear. Now I'm going to avoid it.
What are good? Okay, so this is just for funsies. I don't know if you want to go here, so I'm going to put you on the spot. What are just some mistakes you've made that you're like, oh, bad husband moments? Like, I can think of some for me too, but just what's a couple of random things that 25 years. Come on.
Bad timing, I would say, has been a consistent thing brought to my attention as far as when I will bring something up or when I'll say something. I've tried to pay more attention to the timing of things. Don't always get that right. Either. But that's been something that
I mean, I've had foot and mouth moments multiple times saying the wrong thing. I think
I know
early
the taste
on,
of my own feet. Yes.
I mean, I think early on, I've said, why are you crying over what's the big deal? I think I've said that by mistake.
Yeah.
I one time, and Joelle will laugh about this if she hears this. I did one time leave the room. I've one time left the room in the middle of an argument. And I knew when I was leaving, this is top of the pride. I've never walked out of a room on an argument except for one time with Joelle. And this is early on in our marriage. And I was thinking I was justified. But I could hear in my mind as I was walking out, I was like, well, this is the wrong decision. And I was like, but I'm doing it anyway. And I remember walking out and shutting the door. That didn't go over so well. Let's see. I've also had a foot and mouth moment of Joelle early on with our babies. I think I might have actually said the phrase what have y'all done today? After I've worked all day. Oh yeah. Bad foot and mouth moments. I know you've never said anything like that.
No, I've said plenty.
Yeah.
I've put my foot in my mouth quite often.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would say the thing that's been most consistent there has been the timing. I could actually see it in my wife's face as far as, do you see what I'm doing?
Yeah.
I've got these things going on right now.
Yeah. Maybe not the best currently. You're like, oh.
And so what does that do?
That
how do I react to that? It's, well, I want to be able to say what I want to say when I want to say it. And so that starts that whole, prideful thing.
It's so many good lessons. I think what you said at the beginning of being constant learners of our wives. I mean, I feel like that would be advice we'd give to any husband or anyone looking to get married today. Of you have to take the posture of a constant learner and pursuer of your wife, and it's going to look different. Like when we first got married. I don't know if everyone knows what love languages are. There's some popular articles and books out there. Basically, different ways you can love someone in your life that speaks to them directly, that encourages them. And early on, I did a lot of extra chores and wanted to serve, and because I thought that was actually the way to love Joelle when we first got married. And then I found out that wasn't really effective for her at all. That made no difference to her. It was quality time. In physical touch. And I was like, oh, okay, well, pivot and I'll do quality time and, physical touch instead. Pivot! And then we have kids and I'm trying to work on quality time and physical touch. And she's like, well, basically she's kind of like, well, what are you doing? I was like, well, I'm loving you.
Let me love you.
I'm loving you. And she's like, well, this isn't really that effective. I'm like, how is this not? What do you mean how is it not effective? And basically she's like, well, acts of service and kind of doing the chore, that'd be more effective. And in my head, I think we actually had a little argument about this. In my head, it was like, well, that's what I did when we first got married. What do you mean? And it was like, oh, light bulb moment. These things change year over year or every 6 months or, it's a rolling, what's it called? The goalposts are moving. Constantly.
And they do. And I would say that acts of service, that's been in my wheelhouse for quite a while and often feels easy. Like, I'll just serve. I'll go do these things. And then I would say that there's less importance on the acts of service now than there is, with the listening, the ability to just listen and be able to not have the solution.
Yeah. We'll fact check that later to make sure you're actually accurate that you know right now.
I think I'm not saying that the acts of service cease because they certainly don't.
Yeah,
but I would say that
but
there are other things that become more important.
Yeah. So what would So we're sharing about some different lessons learned, right? How to be an effective husband. What would you say? What's something practical you would tell someone right now, regardless of what stage of life they're at, on thinking about being an effective husband?
Yeah. your wife is going to, she's going to be very observant, and she's going to know you like the back of her hand. She's going to have this intuition that you don't even know how powerful it is until you actually witness it. And asking her is a great step, I would say, as far as how you can actually communicate with her and not just guess, not suppose, definitely not put on the shelf and not care about it. But I would say get that established up front. Have those kinds of conversations. I'm not saying that I did that or did that well or did that at all. I would say that that's something that later on in our marriage we're working on, and that I'm working on and putting more emphasis on, is that better communication. So, again, not coming from an expert here, not coming from somebody who's mastered it, but I see the importance of it.
Yeah.
And
no, that's good.
I believe that Jessica sees the importance of it, and something that we're working on together.
I mean, any husband who says they have mastered it, I'm really not listening to them anymore.
I'm not either.
I think they're in trouble.
Yeah.
That's the guy who's like, well, I'm on my fourth marriage. I've mastered all these scenarios. And you're like, oh, cool.
I've had a lot of practice.
cool guy. Yeah, I think I would. I feel like I would have to say practically for someone like a takeaway is to always initiate, always take the first step. And even the communication, that's so key, because you learn so much through the communication. So, but initiate the communication. Something that was effective for us, and we don't do it perfectly every week, but we've gone through a set of questions that we asked ourselves, we asked each other every week. And I would say the first couple weeks, if you're thinking about doing something like that, they can feel a little rocky to get going because you're pioneering kind of like a new rhythm.
Right.
So they felt like, oh, you're really asking ourselves these questions? But yeah, you really are, because you're leaving no room for anyone to like scapegoat not being honest on what's really going on. So really quick, and we'll share these in the show notes too. But we would ask, so I would ask, hey, how did you feel loved this past week? What does your upcoming week look like? How can I pray for you this week? How would you feel loved and encouraged this week? And the last one is, how would you feel best pursued in sex and intimacy this week? And that last one was always a little...
That sounds a little rocky.
It's a little challenging at first, but you know what? It turned into, a lot of the times, one of us, one or the other, not feeling pursued, and really a lot of it came down to that. A lot of it we're finding the gaps if any of these areas through these questions were just being missed. And of course we're going to miss them on any given week. We're going to make those mistakes, but it would avoid the gap from becoming like a chasm that 6 months later or a year later, here comes the blow up because it's been something that hasn't been attended to.
Sure. No, it's very intentional.
Yes. Yeah. The questions were that I would say those questions and initiating me being like, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about this. Those questions has probably over the years saved a lot of potential pitfalls.
Yeah.
For us.
I think we're all wiser for hearing how you're handling that. And, it shouldn't be like Brussels sprouts, right? Where you're like, oh, we got to do the questions now. It should actually be us leading and saying, okay, well, this is something that's strengthening my marriage. This is something that can help.
Yeah. Yeah.
So wherever you're at out there, whether you're 5 years, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 25 or more, it's never too late to start that up and to initiate that conversation.
I ran out of words for how we could end it.
You should say something like, "So, are you gonna?" And so, why don't you ask Jessica those questions, and I'll say, "Go paint the house."
Yeah, okay, let's do that. That's good. Okay.
Yeah. So, I think it's a great idea to ask those questions.
Kind of like asking questions, like when you get a text, asking a question if you're gonna make dinner for your wife. Speaking of that, too, are you gonna ask her these 5 questions later tonight?
Why don't you go paint the house, Mike?
Okay, here we go again.
Thanks so much for joining us. Please consider rating and reviewing our podcast and hitting subscribe on whichever platform you prefer. Remember to keep moving forward because we're not quite there.